Tov, hi Hillel, and Meir Zalman, and everybody else that's joining us here this morning. Bob, welcome back.
You know, I bought one of these.
From here?
Amazon.
No.
It came.
No, it's this one.
I did. I bought this. It came in the book.
Oh,
You got the small size.
And
You
you
bought the
can't.
cheap edition.
Like $50.
Yeah, right, but this is 70.
I would have paid it. I didn't read it. So
It's a return.
it's no.
Amazon.
Well, either
Like
well,
an iPad.
you give that one to your grandson, and buy some big one. All right, folks, we're learning today a little later. I apologize, but it was a long minion this morning. But we're learning today about the Brit of Yitzchak. My, מכל הלב. נראה אתכם בשבת? מחר, מצוין. מצוין. So we're learning about the Parsha of the week, and good morning to Elaine, Melissa, and Corey. We're learning about the bris of Yitzchak. Oh, I left my book behind. Sorry, forgive me a second. Okay, so let's see what page we're on. Second, here we are. The binding of Isaac, here it is. Where is the bris of Isaac? Hold on, where is Isaac? I'm just looking for the bris of Isaac. Forgive me a moment here. Here. Okay, we're on page 119. Good morning, Dan. Great to see you. So on page 119, Adrian, buenos dias. Great to see you, my friend. And Esbag from Melbourne, Australia. Good to see you. We're on page 119. And let's just read this piece. In fact, we'll go back just a little bit to page 117. It goes as follows. Before God healed Avimelech and the members of his household, that's a different story. We're not going to do it right now. God had already remembered Sarah as he had said to Abraham that he would. Remember, the Parsha began with the promise of the angels blessing Abraham and Sarah that they would have a child. Blessing Abraham and Sarah that they would have a child. Sarah laughed, if you remember. Abraham also laughed. The difference was Abraham's laugh was a laughter of joy. Sarah's laughter was a laughter of skepticism, which is why God asked, why did Sarah laugh? And then he says the amazing, amazing words, Hayipale me'avaya davar. Is anything too wondrous for Havaya? Is anything too wondrous for Havaya, for Hashem? It's those amazing words that if you just believe, you release the blessing. If you disbelieve, you block the blessing. So here it is that God remembered Sarah as he had stated to Abraham that he would. She became pregnant at 89 years old. This is indeed the rule. When someone needs something and prays for the same thing for someone else, God provides his needs first. That's related to the previous portion. We're going to go into it. And God did for Sarah as he had spoken to Abraham. She bore a son. 119. Thus, Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age. At the appointed time of which God had spoken. What was the appointed time? That was when the angels came at the very beginning of the portion. It was on the night of Pesach, the 15th of Nisan, 2048, since the creation of the world, is the day that Abraham was born. How many years ago was that? Anybody do some quick math? 5783 minus 2048. Isaac would be 3,735 years old. 3,735 years ago. By the way, Isaac, right? Abraham named the son who had been born to him, whom Sarah had born to him, Isaac. Is Bob here? Is Bob Wordheimer joining us here today? This is for him. Yisrael, is Bob Wordheimer here? Can you ask him to come? Tell him I want to study with him. Abraham named the son who had been born to him, whom Sarah had born to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac on the 8th day after his birth, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah applied the meaning of Isaac's name, laughter, to her own experiences surrounding his birth. She said, God has brought me happiness. We're waiting for you, Bob. God has brought me happiness. Whoever hears will be happy for me and happy with me. Since Sarah now transformed her laughter, which was skeptic, into a laughter of joy. And so it was. Many previously barren women gave birth at the same time as Sarah. Many sick people were healed that day. Many prayers were answered that day. Thus, many people, it's for you, Bob, here. Thus, many people were happy along with her. Among the numerous miracles that accompanied Isaac's birth was that Abraham retained his potency after this until the end of his life. And yes, it seems like Abraham had more children. Okay. Now, I'm just going to zone in on this little piece over here of Isaac's birth and his bris at the age of 8 days old. Now, if we had to have a board meeting about this and discuss the circumcision, anybody think circumcision is a good idea or a bad idea?
Great idea.
What's the purpose of a circumcision? What's the point?
What's the point? It's a covenant with God.
A covenant with God. Why do we do the bris?
Why?
Why do we do a bris as a covenant with God? Why do we do it in that part of the body? First of all, it's a permanent connection, right? It's a permanent connection, something that you can't take away. In fact, in times of the Greeks, when the Greeks would encourage people to fight with each other naked in the gymnasiums, they were glorifying the human body. Many Jews would try to reverse their bris. It was a sign of shame for them. So those people don't have a portion of the world to come, is what the Mishnah says. But the purpose of the bris is to make a covenant with God, right? Wouldn't it make more sense to make that covenant with God when you're mature enough to know what you're getting yourself into? Bob, what do you say? You're a lawyer, right?
You want my personal opinion?
I want your personal opinion. That's what I'm asking you.
It's not a response to your question.
Oh, your opinion, which has nothing to do with my question. Okay, fine. Sounds like a politician. How
He had something to say about DeSantis.
Yes, okay.
It's got nothing to do with the sentence.
Yes, so what is your personal opinion on whatever topic?
I think it's a barbaric custom.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, now we're talking.
A custom.
He calls it a custom. It means whatever,
I'm
practice.
telling you
It means
how
a
I
barbaric
feel
practice.
when I see it.
You what?
I'm telling you how I feel.
Have you ever seen a surgery? How do you feel about a surgery?
Any surgery.
Any surgery.
How about taking out an appendix? Barbaric?
Well, it's for a purpose.
Yeah, it's for a purpose. I mean,
So he says, what's the purpose of a bris with God? I think it's a decent question.
Wait a second. Where did the
Question's a good
connection
question.
come? Wait a second. Where did the connection? This is not a new discussion. Where did the connection come?
On Bob's first day of return after COVID, we're starting off on a very light, casual conversation
I don't
topic.
agree with circumcision.
It's barbaric. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry, what were you most saying?
And where do you get the connection to God? I mean, it's a part of the body.
Okay.
It happens to be an important part of the body.
So God will know.
So let's talk
Creation.
about this. Let's talk about this, Bob. First of all, why that part of the body? Because that part of the body is the one that man struggles with the most. Do you agree?
Struggles with?
Oh, now we're talking
Struggles with.
morally.
Oh, moral.
Oh,
Zoe, moral.
that part of the body we struggle with, even the most ethical, right? Even politicians struggle with that part of the body.
You said ethical. Wait, you said ethical and politics
Especially,
in the same sentence? No.
right? You see what I'm saying, though? You know how these politicians, you have them, they're like, there's that guy recently, he was championing ethics and morality, and then they found him in a, I forget who he was.
Gary Hart?
I don't know, no names here. But there's all these politicians. They're like, they're the champions of morality until they find until they're caught, right? It's the law in America that you can do whatever you want and until you're caught. So I just, we don't really have that much time, but I really want to validate your question. No, I want to validate your question. No, because there's another class in a few minutes. But here's what I'm saying. I'm just going to touch this topic, guys. I want to touch on it. Bob, I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to give my best shot in 5 minutes or less, right? So first of all, the reason why that part of the body is because that is the most ethical struggle part of the body. That is the part of the body in which we struggle most ethically. We can handle our digestive system, and that's hard. Not eating junk food. It's hard handling your brain. What kind of junk you put in there. Handling your heart is difficult, but we try. But for the most part, decent human beings can handle most parts of their body until they reach that part of the body. And that's where you separate the men from, from the mice. We don't have to know much to discuss over here.
Disagree. The brain is the most difficult part of the body.
You can't cut a piece of that off.
Yeah, you can't cut a piece of that off. That would be painful.
The brain controls.
So let me say this. You know what? Bob, here's what I'm going to say, because I don't want to take up too much of the next class, but so I want to keep this conversation going. But here's what I want to tell you for now. No, for now. The real core of the issue is, why do we do it? Because God told us to. Where did God tell us to? Last week's Torah portion. He said so explicitly in the Torah. Now, that is assuming that you believe, number one, that there is a God. Number two, that God gave us the Torah. Because if either one of those is not okay with you, then we've got a whole different conversation to talk about. If a person does not believe in God, or he doesn't believe that God gave us the Torah, then why do we do it?
Verbatim.
But if you do believe that there's a
Getting
God,
to the core issue.
but if you do believe in God,
Not a rewrite.
exactly, not something that was,
The Torah says to do it.
the Torah states so explicitly.
So that's it.
Explicitly. So that's the answer. But guys, here's my question to you today. The question I want to ask you today. Is, Yishmael is the other son of Abraham. He's the son of the concubine, right? And then there's Isaac, who's the son of Sarah. Yishmael had his bris at 13 years old, as we learned last week's Torah portion. When Abraham was commanded by God directly, Abraham had his bris at 90, I think he was 90 years old. And Yishmael was 13 years old, so he had the bris then. Now, Isaac has his bris, and when Abraham turns 99, when Isaac is, when Isaac is 8 days old, he's the first Jew to have his bris at 8 days old. The first born Jew to have a bris is Isaac, right? So Yishmael now starts making fun of Isaac. He says, you think you're a big shot. You had your bris at 8 days old. You didn't know what was flying. I had my bris at 13 years old. I knew what I was getting myself into. I am much more, my covenant with God is much more precious than yours. You went into it mindlessly. You didn't even know what you were doing. Me, I went into it 13 years old. I'm much more holy than you. And by the way, to this day, the Arabs the Muslims that do a bris at 13 years old, right? So here's my question to you. Is Ishmael correct?
Yes.
Oh, and that's why I knew you had to be. I sent for you to come back here because I knew you had to experience this Torah class. So it seems like Ishmael has a very, very valid point. However, and you're right, from a lawyer's perspective, it seems like he's got a very valid point. Harvey's not taking sides just yet. He's considering the options. You came in over here. I knew you came in already with the. He's contemplating. But look, I agree with you, Bob, that Ishmael has a very good point.
Oh, yeah?
Guys, let me just cut straight to the chase because they're going to turn off the mic shortly on us. So Ishmael has a very good point. I agree. However, as any good lawyer will tell you, you have to consider your options all the way through to the end before you make your conclusions. And do you see the full story just yet or not? The answer is no. I'll tell you why. Because from Ishmael's perspective, he's very valid point. From an intellectual perspective, is right. But what's going on over here in the bris? The bris means a covenant. A bris is not a circumcision. A bris is not merely a medical procedure taking place in the hospital. It is a religious binding covenant between God and his Jew.
And part of his godly soul.
Right. Now, what happens at the bris is a covenant with God. What's a covenant? A covenant is a deal that can never be broken. That's a covenant. A permanent deal, which means not if there's a hurricane. It won't change if there's a hurricane. It won't change if Obama's elected. It won't change if they make deals in the Middle East. A covenant is forever. That's a pact. Now, that's what a covenant is. A covenant is something which is forever. It's like a blood, when you make mixing the blood, or like a covenant, right? Now, what? Done. When you make a covenant, how do you want to make a covenant? Do you want to make a covenant based upon preconceived context, my rational understanding, or do you want to do it without any understanding whatsoever? Which one would you want to get into an eternal covenant with? Now, if you say I came in intellectual, it made sense to me. I was 13 years old and I knew what I was getting myself into. That's great. You're right. But it was only based upon your understanding at that time. Because later on, when God makes a Holocaust, You say, I never signed up for that. That wasn't part of the deal. I'm out. But if you come into the deal at 8 days old, you can never say, I never agreed to that. That wasn't part of the deal, because you never agreed to anything. It was truly an unconditional agreement. There was zero conditions whatsoever. But if you come in with seichel, then the conditions of the agreement are the context of your seichel understanding at that time. You see the difference. And one more point that the Rebbe brings out is that if it's going to be eternal, if the deal is going to be forever, it cannot be initiated by the mortal. It can only be initiated by the immortal being, by God. This is why Abraham fulfilled every other mitzvah that he could before he was instructed by God. But when it came to the bris, to the covenant, he waited until he was 99 years old, until God told him to. Because he needed God to initiate the covenant. When God initiates the agreement, now it's eternal. But if I initiate it on my terms, I'm mortal. How can I possibly initiate an immortal covenant when everything about me is mortal? This is the gift of the bris, where God says, look, I'm going to allow you to shatter your glass ceiling. You are going to break free from being immortal, a creation. You are going to experience infinity, foreverness. You're going to experience immortality, but it's got to be on the 8th day. It's got to be a male. It's got to be in that part of the human body. And it's got to be not with a doctor, surgeon, hospital. It's got to be with a mohel, with the laws of the bris. There's certain things that you're not allowed to do at the bris, and there's certain things that you have to do at the bris. There's certain blessings that have to be recited that can be conducted by your gynecologist or something, right? So now, when you follow these laws, which were preset by Hashem, now you fit the template of the immortal contract that was set by the immortal being. Because if you're doing it on your own terms and by your own initiation, in your own convenience, very nice. It's a beautiful thing. You're making a deal with God. But I agree with you, it's barbaric. Because that is not forever. It's not a covenant with God, because God never agreed to those terms. That would be barbaric. But when you're doing something which God told you to do, that is deeply purposeful. If an appendicitis surgery is worthy in order to save your human life, surely a bris with God is worthy in order to perpetuate your immortal life. That's my point.
You talk about infinity and the number.
They check
and the
the
number.
Tor- they
Just
check-
one at a time. I can't hear. But
And the number 8, you turn it sideways, is infinity, and that's the 8th day.
oh, so he's saying the bris is on the 8th day, and the reason why it's on the 8th day is because the number 8. Well, number 8 is one. I mean, it's a different discussion. Number 8 is one above 7. 7 is a cycle of nature. 7 days of the week, 7 notes of music. 8 is one above nature. It's supernatural. It's infinite. It's out of this world. Anything 8 is miraculous. The 8 days of Hanukkah, the 8 days of Pesach, the 8 days of Sukkot. Right? Anything miraculous is 8. Anything out of this world is 8, which is why the bris has to be on the 8th day. It can't be on the 6th day because we have a cruise booked, coming up, and it's going to cost us $150 per person to change. That's not going to help. You want infinity or not? Because if you can't do it on the 6th day, I agree with you, it's barbaric. What were you going to say then?
The way they check the tefillin and mezuzahs, what do we do about circumcision?
But I understand the question.
How do we-
What do you do?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the
The
question.
wrong rabbi, this, that, the wrong blessings. There's no way to really check that. So what do we do?
Oh, you talk about at a bris.
Yeah, we were able to-
Oh, you mean if you had a mohel that wasn't a proper mohel?
Yeah,
Did it
not-
wrong.
we
Okay,
could have
good,
added
very
on,
good question. Very, very good question.
in
What
full
happens if your
edition.
mohel was a charlatan? What happens if your mohel
Yeah, I
was
don't know.
somebody who wasn't really a rabbi? Right? How do you know? Because you look at the certificate, it says Rabbi Jessica McDonald O'Brien, right?
Right.
And you realize that something smells funny about this, right? So what you can do then is, and I've seen this happen, it's called hatafas dambris. Hatafas dambris, which means you make a prick. You make a prick.
Oh, someone converts.
Like when someone converts. They do a proper bris, but if you already had a circumcision,
But that's what they do.
they'll make a prick, which means release a drop of blood, and then make the blessing.
We should do that as a group.
Yeah, we should have like a mass.
Enjoy. I'd be happy to.
But isn't
stick you.
sort of not the distinction, the difference is this is an 8.
Yeah.
This is an 8-day-old child who isn't cognizant of anything.
That's the
Right.
same thing
And what God is telling the parents to do, the father to do, is to basically bind that child to Hashem
Yeah.
by doing this. It's not like the child consciously says, because he can't.
Okay.
I'm joining.
So
I'm joining
is
the
that good or
tribe."
bad?
No, that's good. It's good. It's good once the child grows up and has some understanding of what that covenant is. And
Oh,
why
now
they
he understands the terms of the agreement.
Right.
Right. Because I want to tell you, there's that movie based on Elie Wiesel's book, God on Trial. In Auschwitz, they put God on trial. They brought the prosecution and the defense, and there was testimony. And the rabbis concluded in the Auschwitz barracks that God is guilty on all charges of having neglected his children, having abused and exposed them to egregious pain, suffering, and whatever. And after they rule that God is guilty, in the film, they say, okay, God is found guilty on all charges. They look up to the sky, they see 3 stars, they say, it's time to daven my roof. Let's make a minyan, right? Because a Jew is not just a Jew when it's convenient, a fair weather Jew. He's committed always, just like your commitment to marriage. Now, marriage you can get out of. Marriage you can get out of. Think about this. There is an option to get out of marriage, but is there an option to get out of Judaism? Is there an option? It's no escape. You can never become Ois Yid. You know why? Because you came into Judaism without any intelligence whatsoever, 8 days old. Therefore, you can never get out. So when we come and we ask a question, we say, okay, where was God in the Holocaust? How can he do that? We say, good question. I have the same problem. Can we call you to the Torah now? Right? You have a question. Von Akasha startet man nicht. Nobody died from a question. It's okay to have a question.
Let's move on though.
But we're still married.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, Bob, you're gonna say? So you're agreeing with me, right?
Yeah, I agree.
This is the reframed context of the bris. Yishmael was asking a brilliant question to Isaac. He was correct. From a mortal perspective, from a human perspective, from a legal analysis perspective, he was right. He was saying that I want to come cognizant, conscious into a pact. Why would I want to come in unconscious? But yet Ishmael didn't understand who you're coming in a covenant with. Consider the not the contract. Consider the subject of the contract. When you realize that you're engaging with infinity, with Almighty, omnipotent, omniscient God, you can't do that on your own terms.
You really don't get the bargain. Abraham tried some bargaining, but you really don't get the bargain. You don't have an option. The point is, 8 days, you don't have an option.
That's right.
And you look, eventually, okay.
But imagine what we're robbing our children of if we choose not to give them a present. Think about that.
That's the segue into what I'm trying to say.
There's no question.
Okay, wait a second.
We have a situation.
Oh, really?
Not my daughter's. I won't even get into it. But the granddaughter, his granddaughter, Jewish, refused to give a kid bris, and the grandfather, I thought he was going to have a heart attack over this.
What happened?
It's still kid hasn't got a bris yet. He's 4.
Wow, amazing.
He's 4 years old.
I
19. No,
It's 19.
no.
Well, hopefully he's going to choose to do it himself.
No, he's a little baby.
can I
Crazy. Why you do
They
that?
need this Torah class. Send them the video of this class. Yeah, sorry, Bob.
Yeah,
No. I have a unique experience because my wife's grandmother was not Jewish,
Okay.
and we had lived in Israel, and we came back. Our kids were born in the States, and all that, and we had sort of a bris for my son, but
Sort of a bris.
sort of a bris.
Semi-bris.
Then he cut a piece off.
Yeah. Okay. We went all that. Sort of. Okay. So then, okay, wait a second. And then, 2 things. One, when do you do it? And 2, what is it? Who knows what it means? One of my daughter's first cousins from the non-Jewish side of the family says to Jill, my daughter, you're not really Jewish. And that reverberated through the
Sounds
family.
like Ishmael.
And she was eight years old at the time, which struck me just now.
Why did she say you're not really Jewish? Because what?
She says you're not really Jewish.
Because the grandmother's not Jewish.
That's right.
Yisrael, are you starting a class right now?
I don't know if there's public interest today, my guys.
Okay.
Oh, fine. So we'll pass it over to you in a minute. We'll pass it over to you. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Bob.
No, You don't know it?
Yeah, so.
Which
I
story?
mean, you know, I sent you, so we decided to put the family through an Orthodox conversion.
Mm.
Chicago, Ben Zion Kagan.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, and we looked for, I mean, Gail in particular, we looked for a rabbi, and we made arrangements to do it. And so my wife, my daughter, and my son all went through an Orthodox conversion. Now, it's clearly one of the most meaningful events in our family history. Now, an 8-day-old baby doesn't really know what's going on, but we all knew,
So that was good.
and we still consider it a seminal, important event.
That's good. I gotta tell you, great story.
And I'll tell you one other thing. We got these certificates, which we registered with the Beit Din in Israel.
Mm.
And you know the story, because I sent you the certificates.
Not the certificates. I never saw a certificate.
I'll resend it to you.
I'd love to see it, please.
So there was a rabbi, Moyle in Chicago. I was friendly with Noah Wolf.
Yeah.
And when the Soviet Jews were finally starting to come out and
Yeah.
come to Chicago, many of the men could not get brisses because they couldn't get it over there. So he volunteered to perform bris.
Well, these Soviet Jews.
Soviet Jews. So he told me the story. Guy's 50 years old, wasn't had bris, and he would do it in the hospital. And he'd give him a local. Gives the guy a bris. The guy, just had the bris, jumps off the table, grabs Noah, hugs him, and says, "Now I am a Jew."
Wow.
After just getting cut, and they start dancing.
That's the point.
That's how meaningful it was.
Yes.
And I'm talking about probably hundreds and hundreds of Soviet Jews who came to Chicago.
Till this day in the Russian Chabad camps, the kids sing, "Yachachu brizanya, yachachu brizanya." You know what that means?
No.
I want a bris. I want to become a Jew.
Yeah.
Because these kids are 10, 12, 14, 18,
Yeah.
and they never had a bris, and they have it in camp. Can you imagine? Go ahead.
No, look, did the bris.
No, they get agreement, I think.
No, look, did the bris of my son. But the point
No, Wolf did the bris on your son?
yeah, the same Moyle. But he did everybody in Chicago. It's not the issue. The point is, you're saying that an 8-day-old baby doesn't know, but Ishmael later in life knows what's going on. And
He does know what's going on. Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Harvey points out he knows what's going on. And my kids and my wife knew exactly what was going on.
Obviously, they were older, right?
Older, and it's much more meaningful.
But it's different.
My point is, this is a fundamental idea in Torah.
Yeah.
You're correct. More meaningful is older. More eternal is younger. And the question is, which one is right? Obviously, more meaningful for sure, but more eternal is the goal. Not to say that there's wrong. If you had to do it, you had to do it. Listen, I didn't have my bris at 8 days. I had my bris at 3 weeks old because something apparently I wasn't ready. I wasn't healthy enough at that time. Okay, so I had it 3 weeks old. I wish you could have had it 8 days, but it wasn't.
Oh, I didn't know that.
See you later. Hasta la vista. Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
saying,
Guys, I don't want to hijack Rabbi Yisrael's slot here, but if anybody wants to do Hebrew 3.0 with Rabbi Yisrael right now, no. Here, Corey's Hebrew 4.0.
Yeah.
Corey's Hebrew 4.0, which is well advanced. We're feeding into her class with Rabbi Yisrael's class now, 3.0. All right? You got to check this class out. It's amazing.
3.0 could do Corey's class also.
And yes, of course, but what's happening is it's going to feed into Corey's class on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11:30. Right?
I don't
No,
know.
no,
There's so
All right,
many
guys, I'm going to sign off. So everybody have a good day.
Who's up
I'll
first?
explain it to you in a second.